Avoiding burnout, learn how to say no more often. Man, what a great takeaway.
BizBuzz. You're listening to BizBuzz. Super authentic, actionable advice.
We're going to open the kimono and show you what's inside.
I'm scared to see inside Mike's kimono.
Hey, it's Mike and Tom with BizBuzz.
If you like geeking out over business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, this is the podcast for you.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to BizBuzz. This is episode number 13. I'm here with my man, Tom Ross.
What's up, Mike?
Recently back from an Austrian ski trip last week. So how was that, Tom?
Yeah, it was beautiful, actually. Although on the second day, I managed to fall pretty bad, which I didn't tell you yet.
No.
I was just skiing down the spit going too fast. And of course, as soon as it flattened out, I stopped paying attention. I was like, oh, Cool, that run's done. And then I hit a bump. My knees weren't bent properly. And you know when you haven't fallen yet, but you know you're about to.
Yes.
And so I'm just skidding and I go, I'm just not going to fight this. So I pretty much just like straight up crashed to
ragdoll and just let it go.
Yeah, this Austrian guy comes up. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I gave myself whiplash. So for 2 to 3 days, it like hurt to swallow in my neck muscles, and I had to like lift my head off the pillow. But apart from that, it was delightful. When I wasn't looking like a buffoon on the piste.
Yes, I had one fall. I, as you know, live in Utah, and I ski a lot. And I had a fall a couple weeks ago. That was one of those ones where I was skiing down. Some slushy snow turned to icy snow, and my skis just went right out from under me on a turn. And I slid probably 30, 40 feet down the hill just on the ice, the sheet of ice. Anyway.
And I've seen you and your family. You ski pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We ski fast. And we got Apple Watches 2 Christmases ago, me and my older boys. And on the Apple Watch, there's an app, a skiing app, that'll actually tell you your speed as you're going. So yeah, that got a little dangerous. I had to quit wearing my Apple Watch when I ski because it's too competitive for me. I'm like, oh, I got to X miles per hour. I was skiing 54 miles an hour down the hill. That was my max speed. Man, you're humming at 54 miles an hour.
I've done very similar speeds, but I know I'm not as good as you. So I was like purely out of control.
Yeah,
and I was like, scary. I need to stop this.
Yes, well, we all got ridiculed by my wife for doing that and being too risky on the hill. She's like, if you hit somebody, could really hurt them. And anyway, I got the lecture.
I love it. She's concerned for them, not you guys.
Exactly. I dialed it back. I think she doesn't want to get sued. I heard about a celebrity that hit somebody down a ski hill and got sued for a lot of money. So,
man.
Anyway.
So what are we talking about, big guy?
Well, so that was a good intro. Completely about nothing. Thank you if you're still listening to our podcast. We appreciate it. Today we are going to talk about avoiding burnout. And interestingly, this is a topic that was recommended to us by somebody in our community that wanted us to riff on this. Over the past few days, I've gotten other requests, not for this same topic, but just people saying to me, hey, I'm feeling really burned out. What do I do? How can I get over this? And so I know that this is something that's happening to a lot of people. I wonder if some of it in the northern hemisphere, we're at the end of winter and leading into spring. And so from my community, where I have a lot of people in that situation, perhaps we're getting to the end of a season and the change of a season, and there's some burnout that starts to happen for me, especially in winter, where you're like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm done with the extra clothes. I'm done with the snow. I'm done with gray skies. And so I think that may have something to do with me feeling a little bit of burnout right now. I know before your trip, you were feeling a lot of burnout. How are you doing now as a result of your trip?
A little bit better, but not that much. Yeah. I was saying to you right before we started recording, I spent half of my vacation finishing up a course. And so it was always planned to be a working vacation.
Yeah.
And to be honest, even when I was resting, it's pretty intense, like skiing down mountains all day.
Right.
I feel right now like I need to go lie on a beach for 4 weeks in the sun and shut my eyes. And so yeah, I'm not fully burnt out, but I feel like it's right there. It's like this ominous cloud hanging over me that any moment is going to burst into a thunderstorm.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay,
How
well,
about you?
I'm feeling burned out as well. I just turned 48 on Monday. And
happy belated birthday.
Thanks, man. It wasn't that great. I mean, I loved my birthday, and my wife did, she made it a great day for me and stuff, but it was, birthdays aren't that exciting. They're kind of, for me now, it's a little bit of another birthday. I'm on the backslide to 100 now, it's
just think, man, it's just another year closer to death.
It is how it starts to feel. I do feel like I'm just hitting my stride in a lot of things that I'm doing, but the age thing, it was a little bit of a struggle this year for me, and so I was glad that was over with. So that may be contributing to it. Some of my burnout, I think, is feeling that I've posted and replied to every DM now for almost a year. On April 1st was last year is when I started my Instagram push, and it's thousands and thousands and thousands of DMs and comments, and I've replied to most of it. And I've posted at least 3 to 5 times a week, but some of these weeks I'm posting 6, 7 times in this growth. And so I'm always working on content and engaging with my community, and I think that's feeling some burnout as well.
Can we talk about that for a sec? Because I can relate so hard.
Yeah.
So it feels like a treadmill that you can never get off, and you never want to sound ungrateful, because I know we're both so grateful for every message and every comment, and it's exactly what we work to attract, is that high level of engagement.
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword, and it never stops.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, like, if you're sick or burnt out or tired, it doesn't stop the questions and the messages coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm getting to a point, like you, I respond to every single one, but it's taking me longer and longer to get back to emails and messages because they're building up, and I'm having more and more days where I'm so flat out with my company. It gets to the end of the day and I'm like, well, I can either stay up until midnight and burn out, or I can see my fiancé and sleep.
Yeah.
And every time I do a story like the other day where I say, you know what, guys, I've got this many messages, this many emails, but they can wait. I'm sorry, they can wait. I need some rest.
Yeah.
A bunch of people ironically message me and say, great, good for you. Well done. You're a good example of avoiding burnout, blah, blah, blah.
Meanwhile, you're completely burned out.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're saying.
But I don't know what to do, because I feel like it may well get to a time where I just am going to have to stop getting back to everyone.
Yeah. I get nervous about that as well, because I want to engage, but like you said, it doesn't turn off. I go to bed at night, and for me, when I'm going to bed is when India and Indonesia are waking up, and I have a lot of followers in both of those countries, and I know I'm going to wake up to a new pile of DMs, and I want to get back to these people, and I do. So I go to bed, I finally got everything zeroed out, and then I wake up and it's all back. It's just this perpetual thing. And again, like you said, I don't want to sound ungrateful. I'm so grateful, and it is what I want. I want that engagement. I want people to not feel alone out there trying to solve their career by themselves. So that's what I want, and that's how I position myself. But it does cause burnout. There's no question about it.
Let me give you an analogy. I don't know if you're like me with this, Mike, but I'm an ambivert. So I can be very social and very extroverted and love mingling with people, but then I also need my recharge time and my alone time. And the nature of social media and our email inboxes, it feels like there being a 4 to 8 hour party happening that we are forced to attend every single day for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And so I can go and have a great party and be a social butterfly and all that good stuff, but then I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna rest next weekend or the day after or whatever it might be. I'm just gonna recharge. But that doesn't happen. We're being forced to go to the party, and we love everyone at that party.
Yeah.
And we want to meet everyone and chat, and we don't want to ignore anyone, and we don't want to be rude. But when you've done that for 200 days, 400 days straight,
right,
and you're like, oh man, I'm going to the party again.
Yeah.
I just want to sleep.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good metaphor, and I agree with that feeling. It is a party that never stops. It doesn't turn off. There's always somebody. I get jealous because some people have turned it off. I'll see people go dark and they disappear for a few months, and then they come back and say, "Oh, I'm so grateful to be back on Instagram. I missed everybody." And I'm like, "Oh man, maybe I should take a couple months and dial it back."
Yeah.
So people do it, and I've got to be better about doing that. I know you tried last week to try to turn it off.
Yeah, I didn't really respond to DMs.
Yeah.
But then I got back from vacation and they've just built up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was going through, I was like, oh man, there's hundreds here.
Yeah.
I was like, and now I have to get back and undo any rest I got on my vacation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, these are the types of things that cause us burnout, and we're talking, and hopefully nobody hears this and makes it think that we're ungrateful, because we are grateful for that engagement.
Yeah, and I don't
it means everything.
I think
to me.
Yeah, me too. And
yeah.
I don't think anyone will think we're ungrateful because they know how we operate, and I'm sure what we're saying is very relatable.
Yeah.
But we have to share the truth on this podcast, and the truth is, right before we hit record, you said, "Tom, can we record the podcast but not go live on Instagram? Because I don't know if I got the energy today." And I went, "Oh, good, me neither."
Yeah,
right.
It's true,
and that's two people that are normally like, "Woo, let's go!" like high energy.
Yeah, and that's where it is. Okay, so I'm struggling with some burnout. You're struggling with some burnout. You just got back from a vacation, and it did not fully scratch the itch, which is something that I think we should discuss here, because a lot of avoiding burnout conversations and advice is, get your downtime, make sure you take care of yourself, go on a vacation, turn it off. But sometimes that doesn't change the burnout. And I do have some thoughts to share about that. Do you want me to dig into those, or do you have anything else you want to riff on before I kind of go through a concept that I think is really important for people?
No, let's jump in. I think people don't really need a definition of burnout. Maybe it's reassuring to hear that we go through it as much as everyone else.
Right.
But let's maybe tennis match for the remaining 30 minutes or so with as many solutions as we can try and come up with.
All right. Here's a concept that I'm going to share that actually cost me a good chunk of money. After I sold my agency, I was dealing with some PTSD. I was still going to bed stressed out at night. I still had anxiety. I had the pit in my stomach because of all these years of running an agency and all of the trauma that inflicted upon me, and it didn't go away. So 6 months after I sell my company, I'm still feeling that. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, if you ever want to talk to somebody about that, I have somebody who's helped me out." And I said, "Okay, that sounds great. Thanks. Yeah, I'll let you know." And then I call my wife after that meeting. That was a meeting with my financial advisor, who's a good friend of mine. And I called my wife and I said, "Hey, Mike just told me that if I ever needed somebody to talk to about feeling some PTSD, that he's got somebody I could talk to." And then my wife said, "So are you going to call him?" She's like, "Go get some help, man. I can't take this anymore." So
by the way, shout out to our incredibly patient partners. I haven't met your wife, but I guarantee she is.
Yeah, she's patient, man. She knows how I operate. So she was very supportive of that. She was like, "Okay, yeah, call the guy." And so I called my financial advisor back and I was like, "Hey, can you give me that number?" And so I started meeting with this counselor to kind of work through some of this PTSD. Super helpful for me. And it unveiled some other issues. This is where I understood that I have issues with anxiety and have felt depressive episodes and things. I started to understand myself a little bit more and how I operate, because I had somebody who was taking a completely external perspective and looking at me and the things I'm saying and helping me understand myself. Okay. So that was a little preamble to the concept that I'm going to share that was shared to me by my counselor, who was just very valuable to me. And it's the idea of investment yield. And this is at the heart of burnout, in my opinion. Burnout is not about the amount of hours you spend. It's not about taking breaks. It's not about getting your Netflix time or laying on the beach. It's not about those things to avoid burnout. Burnout has so much to do with the amount of effort you're investing into something and what the yield return is to you. So let's take an example for Instagram. We were just talking about Instagram. Instagram, if you spend 5 hours making a carousel post, and you're so excited about it and you think, oh man, this is going to be great. This is the best content I've ever made in my life. And then you post it and it gets 2 likes. Nobody sees it. You look at your insights and the reach was like 20 people. All of a sudden, the yield on your invested time is reverse. It's an inverted yield. You don't get a return on your investment. And so you'll feel the start of burnout. You'll start to question, why am I even spending time on this? It's not yielding any results for me. And if you do that 3 or 4 times and you don't get any improvement, you will burn out on Instagram posting and you will probably drop off. You'll probably quit. And I've seen so many people over the last year that exact thing happens. They're like, I'm going to do this. And they start posting content. It yields no return. They burn out quickly and they move on to something else in their lives. Take that same example and go into building a business. If you invest 80-hour weeks over 2 years of time, plus $300,000 of your life savings into a business, and you get no customers when you launch, then you're setting yourself up for massive burnout because there's no yield for the investment that you're putting into it. So this idea of investment yield is at the heart of burnout. And before I go on to two other points relating to investment yield, do you have comments or thoughts on that, Tom?
Yes.
Good.
I agree to an extent, but not fully.
Yeah.
From my experience anyway. And what you're talking about is kind of mindset stuff, because your mindset is altered by the outcome. So if stuff's going well and you feel super grateful and fired up, you can often push for longer without getting burnt out. And if you're feeling very despondent, then burnout comes quicker.
Right.
It's kind of what you're saying, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that, and a lot of the motivational characters in the marketing space and the social media space, they're big advocates for pushing this. And you see Gary Vee be like, I've been hyperactive for the last 20 years, running on nothing but gratitude and that kind of thing. And I don't think that's a complete falsehood. I think it massively, it's been proven by science that your mindset can imbue you with additional energy and stamina and so on. But I don't know if that's enough, because I think even if you are getting the outcomes that you look for, or even beyond your expectations, that might sustain you for a while. But I think burnout can very much still come, even if you're getting a very positive yield back. Because that's what happened with me. When I started my company, I was working 100 hours plus a week. And I went for 1.5 years like that. Yeah. And I did so because the yield was so good. Because we exploded from nothing to a 7-figure business in a year. And when you're a young kid and that's happening, you are running on adrenaline, excitement. Yeah. The yield is beyond your wildest dreams, and that's what keeps you going. But you better believe, my story, and I shared it in episode 2. I burnt out in like the worst way imaginable. And so I think the yield didn't avoid the burnout. It just delayed it and gave me more stamina than I may have had.
I like that. I agree with that. In my career, it can delay it a lot. When the
Yeah.
yield is big, it can delay it years or decades. It can delay the burnout.
And then the question is, though, is that right and healthy? Because you might be destroying your health just because the yield is sustaining you past what you perhaps should be enduring.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't have the answer. I think that's something that everybody's got to answer for themselves. But I do think that there's value in this perspective of investment yield, in looking at in what I spending my time doing yielding a return. Because if it isn't, I'm on a quick path to burnout.
Yeah.
If it is yielding a return, then it can fuel you where your investment is small compared to your return. Now you're getting a yield on your investment, and it can fuel you to keep going. I spent most of the past year doing this. Now, taking this back to Instagram, because this is where most of our audiences are right now. In the start, when I started growing, and it started growing by 1,000 people a week, 2,000 people a week, 10,000 people every 3 weeks on my Instagram, man, it was massively fueling. And I was like, oh, I'm doing this. And it's just growing like crazy. And then we hit like the start of January, and I'm coming out of the holidays, and I'm making some killer posts, but the algorithm had some kind of weird thing that we've talked about in the past that happened at the start of the year. There was some kind of tweak that happened, and my engagement slumped, my reach slumped, everything slumped. Not because the content was worse, not because I changed any of my strategy, but the algorithm changed, and it was demotivating. And all of a sudden I started feeling some burnout. I'm like, man, why am I spending all this time if I'm not getting the growth that I was having before? And you start to weigh this investment yield mindset. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's helpful for people to view this. You have two choices. If the investment isn't equaling the yield, one choice, well, you have a couple choices. One is that you can just keep grinding, and eventually you're going to burn out. Mm-hmm. And the less the yield, the faster the burnout. Another one is to dial back the investment. If you're spending a ton of time investing in something that is not yielding return, then let's rebalance the investment to match the yield. So you have a business that you're trying to grow, it's not growing, but it's sustaining, and you've tried a lot of ways to pivot and adjust, and it's not seeming to break out, then consider reducing the investment to match the yield, or tweaking the dials to change the investment so that the yield goes up. So I think that there's a lot of this that happens, but I love the mindset of investment yield and perceiving what we do in our lives with this idea in our heads.
Okay, so I've got a few thoughts around some of that stuff, and maybe I think about the yield slightly differently, but in terms of enjoyment as well. I think plays a factor, because if you get me doing a task that I can't stand, I'll burn out after an hour.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's something that I love, and that obviously then invariably links into the results and the yield you get back, then I can crank on that for months.
And I think that you mentioned your enjoyment of the task is one of the yields. It's if you love it.
Yeah.
Artists do this, fine artists. They sculpt, they paint, they do those things because for them, whether it sells or not, it is therapy to their soul. It is joy. It's the thing they love to do. It's their passion. So they can invest hours and hours and hours on it with that being the only yield. And I think that that's completely a legitimate reason to do anything.
Yeah, I agree. I've drawn a little diagram here. Think of this like an infinite circle that keeps going round and round. And what I experienced was the harder I worked growing my company, the better it did. Mm-hmm. And the better it did, it made me want to work harder.
Right.
And it went into this infinite cycle of addiction, because it was addiction, it was workaholism. Yeah. And it's really hard to get away from that. Yeah. Because at what point do you stop? You're like, well, I keep working harder and it keeps doing better.
Yeah.
And that keeps fueling my work. And
Yeah.
it just goes round and round and round until suddenly you fall off the carousel and die.
I made it 13 years in
Yeah.
that mindset. And
That's stamina, man. Hats off
Yeah.
to you, because it killed me in like 2.
okay, well, everybody's different and every situation's different, but I made it 13 years of the grind, of the drive, of the push before I was like, this is not worth my sanity anymore. I've got to make a change, which led to me selling my agency and things and moving on to a new phase in my career.
And what I love is you put yourself back in a very similar position where you've kind of gone 0 to 60, and that's only going to get worse as it scales.
The irony, right?
It's completely your choice. You've chosen to put yourself in a precarious position for burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know, because I'm the same exact way, man.
Yeah.
We keep doing it to ourselves. We don't have a boss being like, I order you to work this hard. We just keep choosing to.
I know. I get up in the morning and I'm motivated and driven to do it. So, but it is tough. And so I'm in a phase right now of feeling some of this burnout. And some of it, I think, is the amount of investment I've put into my past year of building an audience and connecting with so many people. And the yield has been there emotionally, and there's the drive and passion. But at some point, going from 123,000 followers on Instagram to 133,000 followers is not as thrilling as going from 5,000 followers to 15,000 followers. So there's so the yield changes because the proportions change. And I'm not saying that to discount anybody, because I've talked so much about how much I love the individual people. And so I do care about the 123 to 133 as human beings, and the ones that I want to touch and connect with. I care about those people, but from a purely metric standpoint of just looking at the numbers, it isn't scratching the same itch. So you've got to realign your perception of what yield means. And like I said earlier, tweaking these dials to reduce the investment to match the yield, or tweak the investment to increase the yield. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that we could look at this.
It's a good way of looking at it. I do like the model.
Yeah. All right. Do we want to spend some time just talking about some of the things that people can do to avoid burnout or to get themselves out of this burnout slump?
Yes, and I know we're going slightly short on today's episode, so are you good if we go relatively quick fire? Because
yes, good.
I've been reading some lovely reviews coming in, and people are loving how actionable the show is.
Yeah, so let's give some action.
All right.
And why don't you dig in and go first on just a couple of points on either avoiding or getting yourself out of a burnout situation.
Cool. So I might have shared this before on the show, but I've got my list of like my personal 10 commandments, where if I follow them and stick to them, I generally avoid burnout. And they are things which include like drink this much water every day, get 8 hours sleep every night, don't work more than 12 to 14 hours a day. And like I say, there's about 10 of them. They're on my Instagram. And I've started to let them slide a little bit. And so, for example, yesterday, this is probably why I feel like a piece of crap today, I worked about 14 hours. And I could do that in the first year of my company. I was working 18 hours plus. But since, that put me in the hospital and I've had residual health issues, et cetera, whenever I now do a 14-hour day, I really feel it. I feel like hungover the next day.
Yeah.
My sweet spot is more like 8 to 12, I've noticed.
Yeah.
And so the second I slip out of following those 10 rules is where I feel it. And every single time, like right now, I'm looking at it and going, you idiot, should have stuck to the rules.
Yeah.
And so I feel like having something there to hold you accountable is typically more effective. Like I slip up occasionally, like now, but it typically holds me more accountable than just a vague idea of like, oh, look after my health or don't burn out. That's too fluffy. I need like strict guidelines to try and adhere to.
Yeah. I love this. And what you just talked about highlighted something as an issue to me recently. We just had a time change in the United States, went to daylight savings time. Not all of the United States, but my state changes our clocks. So we spring forward. We lose an hour of our sleep time. I've felt sluggish because of that. As a result of feeling sluggish because of that, I've been skipping my workouts. For the last 30 years, I've been going to the gym probably 3 to 5 times every morning, or 3 to 5 times a week in the morning before my day. And I haven't been going very much the last couple weeks leading into this time change, leading into the end of winter, these things, and my birthday and all these kinds of things that are kind of hitting. So as a result, I don't go to the gym, which is one of my major things that helps me avoid burnout. It gets my energy up. It helps me feel good about myself. It's all those things that help. It breaks down some of the stress. But as a result of not going, I'm like, oh, well, I might as well eat a hamburger for lunch too. Mm-hmm. Might as well, another cookie isn't going to hurt. And so I start neglecting some of those health things. So as you've been talking, you've got your list of 10 things. This is what I'm going to do to avoid burnout. Exercise is probably number 1. Eating healthy is probably number 2 for me on my list. And those are 2 of the things that I've not been doing well over the last few weeks. And here I am talking about feeling burned out this morning.
And you know what? When you know yourself like that and you have it on a sheet of paper, the paper is never wrong.
Yeah.
Like, neither of us just happen to randomly feel burnt out.
Yeah.
Like, it's there in black and white, the reasons why we do. And we know the reasons why. It's not a big mystery.
Yeah.
We know exactly why we feel burnt out.
Yeah. When you look at it in retrospect,
Yeah,
you can,
of course. So you slip into it without realizing, and then you're like, oh, yeah, damn, it happened again.
Exactly. You're like, oh, you know what? Another cookie today. I can eat cookies today. I ate them yesterday and the day before. And then tomorrow shows up and you're like, oh, I'll just eat some more. And then all of a sudden you realize you haven't been following your rules, and there you are in a state of burnout. Okay, so I think this is one of the big actionable takeaways on this. I love Tom's 10 rules of not burning out. And they are Tom's rules for Tom. But everybody can make a list like this. What are you, Sally, going to do in your commandments to keep you from getting burned out? What are you going to do and not do? What is your specific list? I think that is a valuable thing. I'm going to make mine today.
Let's share it. I might remake mine and
I
post
like it
because a lot of people are talking about this at the minute.
Yeah.
So I think it's valid. So, what we've done there is, guys, we've ironically set ourselves an extra job to do on top of our regular work. Now that we're burnt out.
I'm so burned out. How am I going to get this list done?
Yeah, I'm so burnt out. How do I turn this into actionable content that I can share and get more comments that I need to respond to?
Oh, well, you did that, man. I was just telling everybody else to make their list. Now I'm on the hook to make my own list.
Ironically, to try and counter some of this burnout feeling, I've started meditating again to reduce stress.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done it in ages. And previously, when I did it all the time, I'd got pretty good at quieting my mind.
Yeah.
And I tried it, and I had so many thoughts whirring around. And I just thought, oh, man. My first thought was, oh, man, I really need to get back into this because my mind is crazy. My second thought was, I could turn this whole meditation experience into a really good piece of content. And then, instead of meditating, I started worrying on that.
Oh, no. Yeah. I think that yoga would be really good for me. This is how I've been feeling lately. And I know that it is great for cleansing the mind and a great workout. I think that's something that I need to try in my life to add to my stuff.
I'd love it if you got incredibly good at yoga and you were just this gigantic man that was incredibly flexible. Yeah.
I am pretty flexible, but yeah, I'm not yoga flexible.
All right, I got a second point, and I'd love to know what you think of
Okay.
this. So with my burnout, I've noticed that the more I work, the more work it generates back. And to use the social media example again, the more I am in my DMs and responding to people, the more of them respond back
Right.
on top of the new DMs I'm getting through anyway.
Yeah.
And this can increase my workload in all kinds of areas. Same thing with, my email inbox and so on. It can increase it between like 4 to 10 times what it would just be if I wasn't so actively in there.
Mm-hmm.
And with my company inbox, if I was there live responding to emails, I could be in there all day. And same with my DMs. You could practically be like in a real-time chat room with people, just chatting back and forth, but with 100 people on the go at once.
Yeah.
And yet when I go on vacation and I ignore my DMs or something for a week, they still come in, but way less than I would be getting if I'm active in there. And so whether it's emails or DMs or any different kind of work, the more work you do, the more work it creates, ironically. It doesn't whittle the list down to nothing. It actually creates new lists. Do you experience that?
Oh, yeah. I love that. So work creates work, I think is a fun way to say that. You put in this effort and it's an equal and opposite reaction, to go scientific on it. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And I think that's what you see. And I intentionally don't post some days because I'm like, I can't deal with the comments. So today I'm not going to post at all, or I'm going to post something that I know will have low engagement. But then competitive Mike starts saying, well, why would I post anything for low engagement? Why should I got to post things. I got to go climb this mountain. And so I struggle with that. But I love that, reduce the amount that you invest into it and the yield will reduce, to go back to echo to what we were talking about at the start.
And we did a whole episode recently on high impact work and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I believe in the long-term impact of all the engagement we do in the relationships we build, and I love it, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But do you ever stop and think, like, if I didn't spend dozens of hours every week doing that community management stuff, what you could get done? You could write 5 more books, release a course, launch on more platforms, create more content, expand your reach. And I think that's what a lot of people do, but we're both so beholden to our values of getting back to people that we just can't get off that treadmill.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that. I do think, man, I could have, with the amount of time I've made Instagram posts, I could have written probably 2 or 3 more books.
Yeah.
Out of all that content. So those are coming. It's nice because I have the content done, so the books will come, but it's that thing. You're beholden to your values of engagement and caring, genuinely caring about these people, that it just sucks you back in all the time. Yeah.
What about saying no? Because this is something I am terrible at, but I'm having to force it. And hopefully this person doesn't mind me sharing, but one of my newsletter subscribers emailed me recently and said, I'm doing this dissertation thing on AI. Can I interview you just for your thoughts from a kind of marketer, entrepreneur, designer standpoint? And I said, yeah, sure, of course, reach out.
Yeah.
It came back, ton of questions.
Yeah.
And not super easy, quick questions, but I went, okay, I've committed. I really want to help this person. So I took the time I didn't really have and I went through them and I sent it off. Yeah. And I've got an email I haven't responded to waiting in my inbox saying, really appreciate this. I showed my lecturer. He said that email answers won't be allowed. So would you mind jumping on a call for 30 to 45 minutes with me so I can interview on this? And I've never really said no to anything like that, which is ridiculous. Like being CEO of my company, I should be saying no all the time, but I can't stand saying no. Yeah. I think I'm going to have to with this person because I'm like, if I say yes, it's going to be at the sacrifice of not just my company and my personal brand, but my health and my sanity right now. Yeah.
Okay, exact same person reached out to me, exact same situation. Oh, no. Exact same.
Okay.
And I know because of the way that
That's
you're
so
talking
funny.
about it. So,
Yeah.
I emailed my responses back rather than doing an interview at the start, and then it was the same thing. It wasn't
Oh, no.
sufficient for the thesis. So, I'm in the same situation. I have that request sitting in my inbox of my email right now, and I have not replied to it
I'm
because
going to respond before you do. So
no,
I'm not
no,
the bad guy.
I'm replying right now. No, but I think I will try and fit that in. But it's that extra ask. And I've been bad about saying no at the start. I've said yes to so many things.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
wish I
podcast
could say yes
interviews
to it
and-
all.
Yeah.
Like imagine for a second you were running Riser, your agency still,
Impossible
and doing all your
to do
Instagram.
what
Like-
you're doing is impossible. I could never have done it. So you earn Burnout Man of the Year. Yeah, Burnout Man of the Year.
But
Tom
Burning Man
Ross.
Festival.
Yeah.
Worst
I'll
title
be
ever.
sending a trophy to you. You are the champion, because it is so much when you're trying to run a business and trying to do the engagement level that you do in social media. It's unbelievable. And the
But you
17
crushed me on it
podcasts.
quite, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, saying no. I know we're coming up on time, but I think that's something I'm definitely not. Someone that people can look to as a great example of this, because I suck at it. But this is a personal aim of mine this year, is to say no more and not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
How about you?
It's the last thing on my notes that I have up here on my screen, and I put it in all caps. Start saying no. And it's advice for me better than I could give it to anybody else. I need to take this same advice. And so I'm glad that you brought it up. It was my last point that I was going to make in this conversation about avoiding burnout. But you've got to say yes to yourself. Every no or every yes you say is a no to something else.
Yeah.
So you say yes to the interview for 30 minutes and it's no to your fiance. It's no to your coaching group. It's no to your email marketing strategies for your business. Every yes is a no to something because you only have a finite amount of time. So start saying no, especially when you don't have the time available to give or you can't sacrifice the other elements in your life.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it. Also, I think you know Scotty Russell, my friend who runs Perspective Collective.
Okay.
And I read his guide on being a side hustling king recently, and one of the chapters started by saying, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Oh, I love that.
And I think that's so true. And an example of a hell yes was this show. Because I already had 2 podcasts.
Yeah.
We were chatting.
Yeah.
And you said, did I want to do this? And speaking of yield, this show hasn't even like blown up yet, but it's really showing promise.
Yeah.
I love this show. I love the deeper relationship that we've built.
Yeah.
I love the impact it's having on people. I love the potential that lies ahead with it. I just knew in my gut it would be a good idea. So for me, that was a hell yes, even though I had 0 time.
Yeah.
But there's tons of stuff that I say yes to still that is not a hell yes, and it's me doing it out of guilt or obligation or whatever it might be.
Yeah. It's the same for me. And I don't apologize for asking you to do this show because I do think that this is great.
I love it.
It's a great strategy for both of us. I love the collaboration. I feel like we've got such a great dynamic. But I did feel a little bad because I knew you already had so many other things that you were doing. But I love that idea. It's got to be the big yes. Otherwise, it's no. I think that's so valuable. So valuable. In fact, I don't know that we should dilute the importance of that topic by rambling on about much more on this podcast. Just jump to the end of this podcast. You don't need to listen to the entire thing. Go to that. You got actionable advice.
Is it worth our wrap up? I think that is a great main ending point, but like the summary.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the reviews again, and if you haven't left a review in the podcast app, please do so. We read every single one. We don't have time today, but we're going to read a bunch out soon, I'm sure. But people keep saying they love the summary as well. That is super useful. So set yourself 10 commandments It could be 5, it could be 7, whatever. Your rules for I must abide by this in order to avoid burnout.
Love that. I talked about the investment yield, the idea of how much are you investing based on the yield. And if you are investing a lot of energy into something that is not yielding a return, and that return can be financial, it can be your own pleasure, it can be relaxation, it can be a lot of different things that equal that yield. But if you're investing a ton and not getting the yield, you're on a road to burnout and burnout quickly.
If it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
I love that. And then the last one, I guess, it wasn't the last one, it's second to last, but work creates work. The more action you take, the more reaction will happen. And so if you're feeling burnout, dial back the amount of work you're putting in so that the reactive work doesn't start to manifest itself. And it's a way that you can kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit for a little bit of time and get your bearings, let the car coast, and then start putting on the gas again when you're ready to race.
I love it. And Mike, I will absolutely let you take the sign off. But for my final summary point, I'm going to read a very recent tweet that I put out that simply says, never feel guilty for taking a break.
Oh, I love it. Well,
trying to live by it.
That's good. I'm going to put that on my 10 commandments of my Mike's 10 commandments of take a break. All right, Tom, thank you. This has been a super fun chat. Look at us. We kept it to like 45 minutes. So
I'm impressed. I'm proud.
Unbelievable. Our efficiency is improving.
Everyone, we hope that you enjoyed this. Continue to tag us up. #BizBuds Podcast. We love hearing from you. There's been so many of you, in fact, sharing the show. You are our favorite peeps, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. We'll talk to you again next week on the BizBuds Podcast.